Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, May 21st, 25th, 2021 Board of Education meeting. We will open the meeting here at 5:33. And if the board secretary could call the roll, please.
Mrs. Arvanites.
Here.
Mrs. Hostler.
Here.
Mrs. Stufen.
Present.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Here.
Mrs. Caforio.
Here.
Mrs. Troutman is present. Mr. Collins is absent.
Okay, we have 6 board members present, 1 absent. The board will be now going into closed session, so if I could have a motion for closed session.
I move that the board moves into closed session for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, 5 ILCS 120-2C1. The purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, 5 ILCS 120-2C5. Discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.06, 5 ILCS 120-2C21, and for litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, 5 ILCS 120-2C11.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Troutman, second by Mrs. Hostler. Could you please call the vote?
Mrs. Troutman, yes. Mrs. Hostler.
Yes.
Mrs. Urbanitis.
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen.
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes. 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. The board will go into closed session now. Good evening. This is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021, regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting. The board has been in closed session since 5:30. We have all 7 board members present. Governor Pritzker released a new executive order related to the COVID-19 pandemic for all Illinois counties, thereby moving Illinois into the bridge phase. The bridge phase guidelines will be followed. In accordance with Board Policy 2.230, members of the public can provide public comment at the meeting. The public will be allocated up to 3 minutes per speaker. The board president has set 30 minutes as a length of time for the public comment section of the meeting. Written public comment can also be provided where the board will acknowledge the written comment, but they will not be read. See Agenda Item 1B for the links. The board meetings continue to be live streamed for viewing on the district's website. Electronic public viewing can be found at Board Docs by clicking the video button. And just to make a note, when we move into Phase 5, which we anticipate happening June 11th, we will no longer be doing written comments. So it'll just be in-person public comment. So at this time, I would ask that we stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so tonight we're going to start with a really nice recognition. We have Patrick Baker here, who is the chair of Fine Arts across the district. And I'm going to turn it over to him and let him introduce a couple things and also an honor that the district received. So it's all yours, Patrick.
Got it. All right. Good evening, members of the board, district administrators, faculty and staff, students, community members, and friends. Thank you for giving me a few moments of your time this evening. It's an honor to be here to talk to you about and celebrate the Best Communities for Music Education designation that our district recently received from the NAM Foundation. The NAM Foundation is a nonprofit organization supported in part by the National Association of Music Merchants, where that acronym comes from, and its global membership of over 10,400 organizations, businesses, and individuals. The foundation advances active participation in music making across the lifespan by supporting scientific research, philanthropic giving, and public service programs. One such program, Best Communities for Music Education, recognizes outstanding efforts by teachers, administrators, parents, students, and community leaders who have made music education part of a well-rounded education for all students. Our demonstrated commitment to excellence and equity in programs, courses, facilities, resources, instruction, and access, just to name a few, helped make District 205 one of only 14 school districts in the state of Illinois to receive the honor of this designation. To put an exclamation point on this celebration, I would like to introduce to you one of our music teachers at York High School, Chris Gemko, who's going to provide a little more insight into our music program and what it offers to our amazing students.
Thank you for having us here tonight. It's really nice to be invited to share some of the things that we do. And my daughters are with me here too. I'm Chris Gemko. I teach music production, guitar, a variety of other things, but I think mainly what I do is try to offer opportunities for people to access music in a non-traditional way through Amateur Musicians Club, through Fine Arts Week, through something we do every year, create something called the York Album Project, which has been going on for 7 years now. We just released our 8th album. And Catherine King over here is going to play a song that she wrote. One of my goals is really to, anybody in my presence, to try to get them to push themselves to find their artistic voice. And for the past 3 years, Catherine's been a great example of somebody on that quest. And I'm very proud of the progress she's made and the artist she is and will continue to become. So she's going to play a song for us. So let's give a round of applause for Catherine King.
So, for me, over the past 4 years, I would say that music production and the album project and just music in general at York has been extremely influential on my high school career and will probably be the main thing that I take with me into college more so than anything I learned in a classroom. Just because this is, something I'm very passionate about, something I'm pursuing in college. And I think that the experience I had in high school in a music production class, learning how to produce a song and make like what I'm hearing in my head, what I want my song to sound like, come to fruition, like in an actual audio recording. And also just being a part of the York Album Project and getting to test my songs, really learn what I want to write and not worry about what other people might like, but more so what I'm passionate about writing, and getting to have that live experience in a real recording studio with a real producer, and just that professionalism has been incredibly influential on me as a person and me as a performer. And as someone who is carrying this sort of thing with them into college and wants to do this for the rest of their life, I honestly don't know what I would have done or where I would be as a performer and just as a musician and a person if I hadn't had the past 4 years. Just in the music lab, just even hanging out with friends and stuff, and just getting to bond over music and the things we write and the experiences we have together. It's been incredibly influential. So yeah, thank you to Mr. Gemco and Mr. Baker, because I would not be the same person I am today without the program, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Mr. Baker and Mr. Gemco, and just for keeping the music going this year for our kids in particular. So thanks. Thanks for coming tonight, Catherine. All right. Well, that was definitely the highlight. So next, we move on in the agenda to public comment. As with all public comment, please note that it is the board's practice to listen to public comments with interest in what is being shared and not to provide a response or to engage in discussions. In order for the board to maintain decorum of the meeting, please be courteous and respectful to members of the board, our district leadership team, district staff, and the process for providing your public comment. Please state your name when you come to the podium. There will be 30 minutes allocated. Please limit your comments to no more than 30 minutes so we can hear as many, 3 minutes. So we can hear as many speakers as possible. The time will be noted when you have 30 seconds left. Written public comments received will be acknowledged but not be read during the meeting. Okay, so first up we have Chris Lamika. Sorry, you can definitely correct that.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Lamika, and I'm a parent to two D205 students, a sixth grader, Brian, and a sophomore at York. I'd like to start by reminding the D205 board of its mission and vision. 4 brief statements support the district mission of accelerating learning for all students, and they are, as we can see written on the banner at the back of the room, all students must learn and grow. We accept shared responsibility for student growth. We make decisions based on what is best for students. We are a future-focused community of learners. These are indeed noble, student-centered statements, worthy of respect and admiration that everyone can support. I was encouraged to hear that the board had discontinued saliva testing and hoped that we were headed in the right direction of returning to some form of normalcy for our students, particularly when it came to the planning for the 2021-2022 school year. Unfortunately, this encouragement was short-lived. I cannot help but feel let down by the board's continued requirements to have students wear masks at all times throughout the day, even when outside, despite the state's reversal of the mask mandate. The continuation of over-quarantining healthy students and now promoting COVID shots that have not been studied long enough to know the long-term effects on our growing children. So I ask the board, are these decisions based on what is best for students? What does a future-focused community of learners look like to the members of this board? Does it look like young faces covered by masks, straining to talk and breathe freely even when outdoors? Does it look like another year of unnecessarily quarantining healthy children when our own data shows that the transmission rate is less than 2%? When the school board mandates that masks be worn for protection, we are inhibiting our students' ability to learn and grow. When the school board promotes the notion that the COVID vaccine is a safe and viable thing to get schools to return to normal, it ignores the fact that the vaccines have not been clinically studied to determine what, if any, negative effects it may pose to children. This is not a future-focused cause. When the school board defers its decision-making authority to unelected officials of the state or county board of health, you are not making decisions based on what is the best for students. Rather, the board is hiding from its responsibilities and accountability to the citizens of Elmhurst. I implore the school board to regain the trust of the community and make the decisions on behalf of our students that promote a maskless learning environment,
30
a
seconds.
quarantine-free school year, and allow parents the freedom to make the health choices regarding vaccinations. It is time for the board members to show that their vision statements are more than just lofty ideas printed and hung on a banner. Put these visions into practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Amy Wellman.
Hi, my name is Amy Wellman, and I've spoken to you previously about opening up schools for full days. Despite only 7 weeks of school left, you made the right choice, not the easy choice. I've seen the positive changes both academically and emotionally in my daughter since going in person. Now it's time to get back to a normal, healthy school environment. Though our kids are physically at school, they are still masking and social distancing, which is unnatural and socially and emotionally damaging. It's time to make masking optional in our schools, and I've been struggling to find out who can make this decision. I've put in my time contacting you, the board. I've contacted DuPage County Health Department, DuPage County Board of Health, Illinois Department of Public Health, among other agencies. It has been the most frustrating experience. Each group blames another for why our kids are still following these ridiculous guidelines. Yes, they are ridiculous. There are vaccines available for the population most vulnerable to COVID. Highly effective vaccines. There used to be the argument that our children were masked so they wouldn't infect a teacher or an adult at home. That argument can no longer be used because those individuals have the choice to be vaccinated. Now I hear the argument is to protect medically fragile children in school. COVID is not the only virus medically fragile children need to be protected from. And I can say that from very personal experience. I had a medically fragile child who had a trach and severely compromised lungs. Getting COVID would have been life-threatening to him, as were other common viruses like RSV, the flu, and even the common cold. No one wore masks for any illnesses that were so dangerous to him, but not to other children, whether there was a vaccine available or not. The burden to protect him was on my husband and me as his parents, and we made decisions about acceptable risk on a daily basis and never expected nor wanted healthy children masked for our son's protection. We've actually never required masks on healthy children to protect medically fragile children. In fact, it's usually the exact opposite, and the fragile will wear medical-grade masks when warranted. You've asked us to write our legislators to stop House Bill 2789 because we don't want decision-making taken away from local school boards. I agree, and want to see the board in control of school policy. That includes making masks optional as a top priority for the start of next year. I struggle to find what, if anything, is legally mandated and what is up to the discretion of the board. And the blame game and finger pointing without any clear answer is wearing thin. Masks should be optional without question this fall. Optional. The choice to mask or not should be up to the parents and respected.
30 seconds.
Evidence shows that typical children are not at high risk when it comes to COVID, nor should we be concerned with them passing it to the high-risk population with effective vaccines available. We need our policymakers to stop operating from a place of fear and put our kids first. Stop passing the buck and start leading the way. We elected you to be our children's advocates, and whether or not you have final decision-making authority, you are our voice and the voice of our children, and we need you to use it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Jackie Tamer.
Before I get started, can I approach you guys or hand this out to you
You can bring it to me. Yeah, you can bring it to
for
me.
written communications or public to be posted on board docs. There's, I think, 9 copies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you this evening. I'm speaking tonight about an issue you already know about, but have chosen to ignore it. I'm not speaking on behalf of any child that this has happened to in particular, but all children I'm advocating for. There is a room at Bryan Middle School used for isolation, close contact quarantines, and such. This so-called room is a plastic zippered room. By the picture there, it looks like you can't see in or out of it. One child called it a secret locked room in the back. I guess it would feel that way to spend 1 minute in there as an adult. As a child, I can't even imagine. And what if there's a fire while in that plastic zippered room? Doesn't matter how a child ended up there. Doesn't matter why or even for how long. The issue is that this room even exists, period. Furthermore, it causes fear in other kids to be called out and may have to enter the plastic bubble. So much fear that one child refused to attend school for 1 week because of not wanting to go to that bubble in case of a close contact quarantine. IDPH doesn't require a plastic room for isolation or close contact quarantines. In fact, I spent many hours researching this to try to find a room in this country that can match what Bryan Middle School did. No such luck. Bryan sure stands out, and so does Sandburg. Some of less fortunate districts had clear plastic rooms with a door. Bryan's isn't like that. It's zippered up. I recently found out Bryan and Sandburg are the only schools in DuPage County to have a room like this. When asked to one of your administrators if he thought this room was a good idea, he said yes. He did. He said it's extremely dangerous, the virus, and dangerous and contagious. Let me be clear, a top administrator that is in charge of coming up with this believes a plastic zippered room is the right solution and a good idea for our kids. Staff and board, you've been living a COVID world for a long time. We all have. The goal has been to see what regulations and restrictions you can put in all year. Look from the outside in. Do you think putting any child, for any reason, in a plastic zippered room is actually a good idea? Anyone that believes this is a good idea should reconsider their profession. Anyone that can actually put a child in this room should also consider their profession. The district and anyone involved with creating or implementing or putting a child in this plastic room owes each child a sincere apology. Not an apology with an excuse as why you thought it was a good idea. A pure apology that recognizes this was wrong and detrimental to a child's mental health.
30 seconds.
And anyone that thinks, oh, but the child was treated good, we checked on him or her, needs to rethink what child focus really means. Please don't let COVID harden you guys up. Staying in power with no, we won't, or no, we can't attitude. Child-centered is needed and fast. To the board members, I hope I hear back from one of you soon that this has been taken care of and this inhumane room no longer exists. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Dine?
Hi, I'm Kate Dine. I'm here today on behalf of my 3 children and everyone else's children enrolled in D205 that is forced to wear masks. I'm here to plead for them to not have to wear masks anymore. It saddens me every day when I send my children out the door to school and they put on their masks for a better part of 7 hours. And for what reason? Children do not pose a risk to themselves or to each other. Every adult that wants to be vaccinated is vaccinated. So again, why are the children still masked up? Even when they're outside, they do not even get to take down their mask when they're outside if they still want to play with their friends. There is something tremendously wrong with that picture. We are teaching our kids to continually live in fear, to continually breathe in their own carbon dioxide in their own bacteria-ridden masks. Do you watch kids wearing masks, constantly touching it, not wearing it properly, spreading germs in their mouths? It's crazy. How can we possibly continue into the fall school season making them wear masks? especially since we do not know what the long-term effects of them wearing masks are. Why are we just going along with the nonsensical guidelines? I ask you to be leaders, step out of the box, and use the science out there to put an end to this. Do you ever think about how hard it is for the kids to talk to each other and their teachers, to read emotions without facial expressions? Our kids are not getting the support and confidence they desperately need in school due to wearing masks. I could go on about all this, what's wrong with children wearing masks in school, and get into things like the chemicals and microfibers they breathe in when their masks begin to deteriorate, or the reduced oxygen intake that they have to deal with for 7 hours. But I won't. I simply ask that you do the right thing and make masks not mandatory. Let parents decide what is the best for their own children. If a family is fearful, then they have the option to put masks on their kids.
30
But
seconds.
for the rest of us, please be a leader and let us choose. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Fisher?
Hi, my name is Ben Fisher. I have 3 kids in D205. Thank you for allowing me to speak again tonight. When I spoke to this group a couple months ago, it was on the eve of a vote to send our kids back to school full time. While we were appreciative of the efforts to get to that point, we were also frustrated as parents that it took that long to get where many schools all over the world, country, state, and even our community had already been for months. Unfortunately, I have that same message tonight, this time around masks. When I spoke a couple months ago, I asked for a return to true normal and mentioned we should consider removing masks in school. I admit I was a little reluctant to bring it up, and it had become politically controversial and seemed so far from reality. But now, after studying data and given the at-risk population, especially teachers, is overwhelmingly vaccinated, I am adamant that masking our children is not only unnecessary but harmful. There's been a common misconception that masks have been a key mitigation strategy that has allowed schools to remain open. That simply is not true, as there have been many schools all over the world that have not forced masks on their children, particularly the youngest learners. Many people are surprised to learn that there are entire countries have only required kids over 10 or 12 to wear masks, or that in many schools, masks were never required once a student was sitting in their desk in the classroom. More specifically, in Sweden, a recent study of 1.8 million maskless kids led to 0 COVID deaths. And this data point occurred before the vast majority of teachers had been vaccinated. Now the policy to force masks on kids looks even more unnecessary, as the data shows that an unvaccinated child is at less risk from an adverse event from COVID than a vaccinated adult. This point right here should really end the debate. An unvaccinated child is at less risk than a vaccinated adult. So why not keep the kids in masks to be extra cautious? Because there are serious consequences with masking students and teachers in schools. During the 2003 SARS outbreak, there was a marked decrease in socialization amongst masked children. In the UK, the chief public health advisor has said that since the beginning that children under 12 should not wear face coverings because masks negatively impact their development. Currently, no children in the UK are required to wear masks at school. It's really perplexing that we as parents have to explain to educators that children have developmental needs that require them to see other people's faces, to read expressions and social cues, to learn speech at a very basic level, and most importantly, to feel safe. We've seen the harm masks cause firsthand with our own 3 children who have been more withdrawn and less social this year. Our son at Madison received speech and emotional therapy without being able to read lips or expression. He regressed after 2 years of critical in-person learning. Were disrupted, and at his recent disappointing IEP meeting, we wondered why we didn't pull him and enroll him in a private school despite our love for Madison and his teachers. His teachers have admitted that masks have led to extreme anxiety for him this year, and he was unavailable to learn for much of the year.
3
Shockingly,
minutes.
there has been no push by our public officials to examine the harm masks cause to students. We've placed the burden of COVID on our children for too long. Let's end this now and give them something to look forward to in the fall by making masks optional.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Mrs. Troutman, are there any, or how many written comments?
There are 17 written public comments.
Okay, all right, thank you. So those, the board reads those, and then they are posted on the website, and they are also submitted into the minutes. All right, next item on the agenda is approval of the board meeting minutes. Item A, approval of Board of Education meeting minutes, April 13th, 2021, April 27th, 2021, and May 11th, 2021. Were there any changes to those? Okay, then those stand as presented. Item B, approval of closed session meeting minutes, April 13th, 2021, April 27th, 2021, and May 11th, 2021. Those stand as presented. All right, item 8 is reports and presentations. Tonight, we have a presentation, an update on the architectural plans for Field, Fisher, and Jackson Elementary Schools. So I believe that Todd Schmidt and White & Company are going to help. And Todd, do you want to come forward a little bit, or is that, or you're good?
There we go. Up close and personal. With us tonight, we have Craig Slipka and Brad Paulson from White & Company, who is our architects of record for this project, and Terry Fielding from ICI. He's our construction manager, or one of the many construction manager teams that we have out there. What we're going to do tonight is part of the referendum process was to build a brand new school for Field Elementary School, put some additions and renovations out there. Particularly tonight, we're going to be talking about Jackson and Fisher. Where we're at with the design process, these are projects that we're looking to bid out in November, December timeframe and start construction next summer. We're kind of at a fork in the road based on some information that is, as we've been going in and diving into this, looking at some of the issues that are out there, we're kind of looking at two different ways of approaching this. The first one we're looking at right now, if you go to the next page, Field Elementary School. Initially in the referendum, we had a 3-section building that was being proposed for Field. With that, we had about a $29 million budget in the referendum. Right now, if we look at the project estimates, we have estimate ranges up there from $31 to $34 million. Part of that is some of the unknowns that have happened in the market right now and some of the costs of the goods. We're not sure where that's gonna land when we send this out to bid. The 31 is kind of at we took the numbers that we got from Lincoln and applied that to what we have right now with a 3-section at Field, and that's about what it comes out to right now. We still have some design work to work in that process. We're not gonna bid it out for obviously till November or December, but that just gives you a snapshot of where we're at right now. With the other option that Craig's going to show you tonight is option 2 is a 4-classroom, 4-section building. And with that, it shows you the estimate that we'll have in there between 33.5 and 37, based on that same range principle that we had in option 1. Now, reason we're here with Field is we had some issues that, was brought up to us that, the school is going to increase in enrollment. We already have 66 kids registered for next year. Our projections were 61, and we think that that's going to go up. We have a neighborhood that has a lot of tear downs and younger families moving in. We have new home construction in there. We really don't know the impact of all-day kindergarten. It looks like it's going to be increasing our enrollment. And based on these factors, we know that Field is going to continue to increase enrollment over time. So that's where we're at the 3-section or 4-section. Do we build the 3-section and stick to the referendum, or do we sit there and expand it by 6 more classrooms? The next few slides, Craig's going to take you through the design process of the two.
Todd, before you go on, I just want to point out, you said we don't know the impact of all-day kindergarten. There's some aspect of that that's true, but we do know that instead of 2 kindergartners sharing a room when they're half-day, they now each section needs a room.
Correct.
And in some buildings, that means 1 more classroom. Some it means 2 more classrooms for kindergarten. And the other thing is that we have a very well-established pattern that families have sent their children to a private school for all-day kindergarten and then come back to the district for first grade. And we have, now that we are implementing all-day kindergarten, we're seeing that trend change, which means our kindergarten numbers are increasing. So those are 2 things we know. And, you know, I think there's some more information coming up about the fact that this year with the impact of the pandemic and some parents pulling students and children out to go to private school and knowing the uncertainty of, will all those students come back? Will some of them, will even more come back because of the attraction of new schools? There are some uncertainties, but we do know all-day kindergarten takes more space than half-day kindergarten, and it's more attractive. It meets the needs of our families better.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
We're good. Good evening, everyone. Nice being here again with you. Just by way of referencing, just want to take you through. Can I take my mask off or? No? Oh, never mind. Just by way of kind of referencing previous conversations we've had both at this level and the Finance Committee level, we want to take you through where we stand currently with the field design being a 3-section school, and then what it looks like as we evolve it into a 4-section school. What you're looking at over here right now is just the initial site plan. That big white box is the footprint of a 2-story brand new school over at the field campus or the field site. The building really is more towards the north end off of North Avenue, and then you'll see the back end where we have underground detention, enough parking for all staff members plus some additional visitors to the site, and enough queuing on the site for roughly 24 to 25 cars that you can see around the loop over there. In the back, southeast corner of the site, a little bit of green space for the kids to run around in, and certainly a generous playground, hard surface play area that is connected back to the building with some learning spaces or outdoor learning venues kind of scattered throughout the perimeter, around the perimeter of the building for some additional instruction on the outside of the building. So that's where we're at with the 3-section site plan. The floor plan itself on the next slide gives you an indication of how the building itself will lay out. What you have to do is imagine yourself kind of rotating the building counterclockwise, 90 degrees. And what it reveals over here really is a very well organized plan in terms of how the grade levels stack on top of each other, where all the public spaces are. On the bottom end of the drawings or each one of the diagrams, first floor being on the left side, second floor being on the right side. But on the bottom half over there, besides the main entrance, right in the lower left-hand corner, what you see in purple, the administration area, the gymnasium, which also serves as a tornado shelter, similar to what we did over at Lincoln, and then flanked on the other side by some of the support functions. Between that bar of space and the classrooms, I'm going to just walk up here. It's a little easier. This bar right here is dining on the first floor with a connection to the upper floor with a gathering or learning stair. Get to in just a moment. And then everything that happens on the north side, really of the footprint over here, that's where all the classroom spaces are. Okay, so on the first floor, kindergarten, first and second, and then you'll notice they're kind of pinwheeled around the central staircase area, and all those purple spaces that you see over there are resource function spaces, right? Physical therapy, psych, social worker, reading specialist, and the like. On the second floor, very similar layout, but instead of the dining area, sort of in this middle bar, we have the open library concept that we've implemented or we're implementing over at Lincoln. The green spaces surrounding the perimeter of the library, that's your enrichment programs, makerspace, art, music, and then almost an identical footprint on the second floor with third, fourth, and fifth graders surrounding sort of that open stair and some resource functions that everybody has access to. So a really compact floor plan, quite a nice tight use of the space, and we felt pretty comfortable with where we were going. What does that look like, though, when we go to a four-section school? And that's what the next slide is all about. More or less, we're keeping everything south of the classroom wings the same, with the exception of the dining, which we had to bump out a little bit because we're going to be serving more kids at any given time during the course of the day. Really, the changes that happen in the classroom wings where we're adding the 4 sections. And this is our first attempt at this, so we do recognize when Todd said that we're still kind of massaging things. He really means it. We have a little bit of work to do to tighten up the square footage a little bit, but the basic layout of the spaces stays the same. And we're still going to have the living room sort of collaboration zones and all the classrooms flanking that particular shared area. And that happens in each one of the neighborhoods for each one of the grade levels, both on the first floor and the second floor. Gym stays the same. The admin spaces, main office stays the same. Library grows just a little bit with the dining simply because of the fact that they're stacked on one another. But all the other same program spaces that we had in the previous 3-section scheme are identical to what we're using and implementing over here. So, kind of bringing it back to a macro level, if we can go to the next screen. How does this look on the site? What you see in red is an overlay outline of the original site plan that we showed you in the white over there. And more or less, we feel like we can make this work with some adjustments to the site without losing any parking or any queuing space. It does shrink up sort of the plaza, entry plaza area a bit, but I think, again, with a little care and a little extra work, once we get your approval, we can make it work on the site. Does anybody have any questions for us? Me? All right.
Somebody have anything about the field?
I did.
Oh, Chris?
Yeah, so the the cost numbers that you showed, Todd, on the project, so is that, I mean, I see a lot of businesses and industry struggling with cost inflation and building materials channels, so is that the right way to think about how that's increased in the base case?
A lot of the increase that we're showing right now is material related and related to COVID and some other things that we're seeing right now that's causing material shortages and some uptick that we're anticipating is going to continue through the 4th quarter of this year, which means that it will hit for the bid cycle.
Okay, understood. So would you mind going back to that page? Sorry, the introductory page that outlined the cost. So the 29 versus the 32.5 midpoint there, we should think of that as just cost inflation and not change of scope, correct?
On the base model, yeah.
On the base, okay.
Yeah, the base model was originally planned for a 3-section school, so we allocated money and so forth. But there's also there's some water mitigation and so forth that had to be added to this project, like we did at Lincoln and Edison. So some of that's due to that too as well. But that's was just things we didn't anticipate in the original cost.
Okay. And then option 2, so the cost of adding a 4th section, excuse me, is basically a couple $1 million.
Yes, and that's
2 to
primarily due to the increase in size of the square footage and just the growth of the building, both in structure, whatever it takes, infrastructure inside to support it, roofing and site adjustment and so forth.
Okay. And then forgive me because I didn't flip ahead yet, Todd, but is the full budget context of where we're at with all of these projects in the presentation as well? Or?
Not in the presentation, but I do have that.
Okay, maybe we can get to that then at a later point. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I think the way you've designed Field, I think it's lovely, but would a traditional brick building with traditional smaller windows be significantly cheaper to build?
Do you have a harder question for me to answer? So things have changed, both in building design, education, environment, and so forth. And the traditional way schools are built, just they aren't built that way anymore. You do want a lot more natural light. The exterior wall that we have on this building is a lot more energy efficient than what a normal traditional brick building would be. But with some of that energy efficiency, of course, goes additional costs and so forth because for the materials and the construction methods. So the windows are more efficient, allowing more light for a better environment and a better learning instruction. So you wouldn't really, even if we reduced it to a traditional brick building and so forth, you wouldn't meet the energy code, first of all, for the exterior wall, so we couldn't build it that way. And you wouldn't get a good product for a learning environment. So there's trade-offs in design for that.
So I take that as a no.
That's a no, but there's more than just one reason why we don't build traditional schools. It's just, it doesn't meet the energy code, it doesn't meet the good learning environment, it doesn't produce the long-term product that you're going to need for education.
You're saying all that glass is more energy efficient than a brick wall?
The glass has a high efficiency. Certainly if we enclose more wall, that would increase the energy efficiency of the building somewhat, yes. But you're only trading an incremental dollar for that, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head. So when you eliminate the glass, you're putting back the high efficiency wall that I spoke about. So there is a step down in dollar, but overall it's not going to be significant on the cost of the project.
Yeah, I've just been asked recently several times, where are we coming up with $4.5 to $8 million, and I'm just trying to find it.
I understand, Jim, and I'm doing my best to explain to you the answer, but the answer is a little more complex. And it's so whatever, the building envelope has to be completely enclosed, obviously, for weather and so forth. So whatever element you change out, you're getting an incremental reduction if you have it at all. You're not getting, but that incremental reduction is a smaller square footage of the entire exterior, which doesn't make it a significant impact on the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't know whose question this is. Linda, you started talking about the enrollment, Todd, Chris. But help us understand 3-section enrollment versus 4-section enrollment, what we currently have, what we think we're going to get, how much, like I'm trying to get a sense of how much room additional space would we have at 4 sections, because I know we've heard in the past we shouldn't make it too big.
Right.
But I've always been the advocate, are we making them big enough? So, I'm okay hearing this. I'm not okay hearing it at this time. So help us understand so that we can get it ourselves as well as communicate to the community. Because to Jim's point, it's where are we going to get the additional money, because it's all allocated for other projects. So I'm trying to get a sense of enrollment. What will it look like in a 3-section? What will it look at a 4-section? How much extra capacity would we have? Because we still have schools that are over capacity, like we're going to hear the next 2 schools.
Right. So that's a complicated question, of course, because as I mentioned earlier, first of all, we have the impact of all-day kindergarten. When the last year that we had all of our kindergarten sections were half-day, there were 26 sections of kindergarten. And, that technically could be 13 rooms, but some schools would have 3 sections, so that would take 2 classrooms. So it's not doubling the number of classrooms, but it's significantly increasing the number of classrooms. And this school is one where it's very possible they could need a 4th kindergarten classroom, a 4th section for kindergarten, if not this year, in the future. And then of course that follows them all the way through. That you need 4 first grades, second grades. What is a little uncertain about Field is there are a lot of teardowns, a lot of new homes there, and so the question is, where are they going to attend? There have been some families that have been traditionally that have sent their children to private or parochial school, and but we also know that a brand new school attracts families, and instead of paying tuition, they're coming to a school that they're already paying through with their tax money and you know, an attractive new school. There is another proposed multifamily building structure that is proposed for in the area of this school, although, you know, it's in the very early phases. We don't know if that's going to happen. And so that is the thinking, that this school has the potential for great growth. And the original design didn't add any classroom, it added space, really much needed space, great, you know, areas for special instruction, for student collaboration, for all kinds of great things, but not a net addition of classrooms. And so the principal expressed great concern about that. But we're also thinking about, you know, and the other thing is that we know that the dual language program is outgrowing at school. We know that there's been discussion about a self-contained REACH program, and to think about where those programs would go is another. So there are other needs as well. So having this school be bigger gives more flexibility, and including the flexibility of accommodating the students who are in its attendance area. So I don't know if that helps, Karen.
It's a repeat conversation that I've had for a long time with the referendum, saying, I see in my neighborhood tear downs.
Yeah.
People said Jackson was going to be fine, and now we're adding a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I said that same thing about Field. We are. So we just, so I guess I'm going to net it out. I'm going to say, what's the capacity at Field today? What's the enrollment capacity? So
I think it's about 450 for a 3-section school. Is that correct, guys? About 450.
That's for a projected 3-section school.
Correct. A 3-section school
Right.
capacity is about 450.
What's a 4-section?
600.
Okay. What are we currently at Field?
391.
That's current enrollment. What's the capacity at that current school? Is it 450 in the current capacity, or less than that?
About 450.
Okay. Yeah, so 59 students. We think we'll probably get a lot more than 59 students. If we do dual language option, maybe Field will be big enough. The REACH or magnet program, et cetera. I guess the question will be then, when we get to the numbers, is how are we going to find extra money? And my big question is, now I'm asking at all the schools, where are we? And I'll assume that you all are looking at that because you're bringing to us Field and Jackson and Fisher, but I'm still going to put it out there. And then I'm going to ask, Lincoln is currently being built as a 3-section, right? Thank you.
Lincoln is going to be a 4-section school.
Which is larger than it currently is, correct?
It's currently a 4-section school.
But we think that that's going to house all the people because the tear downs were happening earlier, and we know those numbers, where Field is continuously tearing down still. And that's why we think that we need to add there and not at Lincoln, for example. I'm just asking, as long as we're revisiting, I'm asking.
Space at
I
Lincoln on the
thought
site.
at Lincoln you couldn't put more on the site, but am I
The site
correct?
is maxed out, right?
Okay.
But my question then is, like Fisher is over capacity. Jackson, we moved students to Edison because it was over capacity. We're still saying it's over capacity. What I'm trying to understand is where our neighborhood schools are, who can accept, is there going to be room anywhere? And where will we put the students? Even though we went out to the community and said, you know, do you want neighborhood school, you know, what's your priority, you know, neighborhood school. So I'm trying to set ourselves up for asking the right questions now to make sure we nail this.
So Edison is when it's finished with construction this summer, it will be a 4-section school. Currently has about 300 Edison students in it. Next year, we're going to add 300 Lincoln students at Edison. So next year, we're going to have about 600 students at Edison. The following year, we're going to have field students at Edison. But then the following year after that, it will only be Edison students again, and there will be more capacity at Edison in 3 years. I just wanted to point that out. I think that's something you were asking about.
Yep, that's kind of the thought process. So we might, in theory, have capacity at Edison for potentially 300 students.
In 3 years, that is correct. After Field is built, Lincoln and Field will be built, there will be more capacity at Edison.
But, and then remind us with that, Chris, some of the Jackson students are going to Edison. That happens after the Lincoln and the Field projects, correct? Not next year. It happens when all the projects are done.
So the boundary changes start following for families that buy houses in that area after June of '22.
Okay, so there'll be less than 300, just, yeah.
Yes,
At Edison,
certainly
because
less.
they're taking on some of
It's
the
a
Jackson
small, it's a small area in that boundary change.
Go ahead, Jim.
Just quickly ask, what kind of extra capacity do we have at Emerson?
I've been looking at that. Because we're looking for a solution to our short-term problem at Field, and all of their classrooms are being used right now, but they have some spaces that are for specials. You know, and I hate to talk about solutions here before we've worked through what those are, but there could be a temporary. They don't have any extra classrooms. Emerson doesn't. They have some spaces that are currently being used for special instructional groups that we could use for a classroom temporarily if we had to. But I went through their floor plan with the principal there, and all the classrooms that they have are being used.
Okay, happy to give you time to do your analysis, but I mean, at one point, Emerson was, you know, to the point we had to add 2 classrooms. And I forget what the high point of enrollment was there, but if I remember correctly, it's significantly less today. And I do get where any school can expand to fill the available space. Lincoln has, or I'm sorry, Edison has always been a poster child for that. Well, Edison has been. I mean, Edison, you know, before the addition had room for an extra 100 kids, but every classroom was used. I mean, I get that. If I'm the principal, I'm using every square foot I can. So I'll let you do your analysis, but you know, we're moving kids from, you know, from whatever schools to Fisher for the dual language program, and now we're talking about maybe moving more for some kind of an enriched program. You know, the kids got to be coming from somewhere, and we've got to have extra space somewhere. So I'm just let you do your analysis and come back with
right, and unfortunately, they don't all come from one school. So you have 9 from here, 7 from here, 3 from here, and so it doesn't necessarily open up a classroom. But yes, it does have an impact. Yeah, there are. I don't know, Chris, do you have that? I don't have that with me. I'm sure I don't tonight. That showed the number of kindergartners in dual language that came from the other schools. Sorry to put you on the spot. You had it the other night. I don't know.
Yeah, and I have it again. Shockingly, I have that note right here. 4 from Edison, 9 from Emerson, 3 from Field, 8 from Hawthorne, 1 from Jefferson, and 3 from Lincoln.
And for a total of how many is that?
28.
Yeah.
One more time.
That's
Edison is 4, Emerson 9, Field 3, Hawthorne 8, Jefferson 1, Lincoln 3.
So, Linda, I agree. I think, you know, long-term building brand-new schools is going to bring, at this level of innovation for teaching and learning, is going to be highly attractive for homeowners and people looking to
move into highly sought-after suburbs. And it leads me to a lot of the comments that our colleagues here are making around what does that mean as far as the impact on all of our schools. So I'd love to look at a couple things. One is, you know, I don't know the last time we did a demographic study, but maybe it's time to look at one.
Yes.
The other is, you know, we have all these wonderful ideas because we're not building traditional schools, nor am I supportive of building traditional schools. And we are expanding our curriculum and our student opportunities in a way that is really fun and exciting for kids and teachers. So what I'm getting at is there an opportunity for the team to work on a longer range facility plan? That, of course, we have our referendum and this project that we're working on now. But how do we create a plan that looks at the curricular needs for teaching and learning over the course of the next, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, taking into consideration trends in our community, enrollment, and all the above, and creating a facility plan and then a finance plan that will complement the achievement of those goals. So we might not know what the end is going to look like in 15 years, but we have a pathway of trying to solve some of these problems in the longer term that might be more explicit for finance committee, facility committees, the public, the board, the administration to kind of look at. And that plan, it doesn't become a static, this is what we're doing in the way that the referendum does, but it's more of a flexible, we have the ability to move and shape as we move through the course of time for our community. So that's just an idea I'm putting out there to kind of get at a lot of this detailed information. When it comes to field, my children go to field, I understand the capacity issues. It is very tight. And so I think what you're getting at, Karen, and I don't want to speak for you, might be a little bit more around facility usage percentages, how much of the facility is used, what percent of the facility is used on a daily basis, and for what type of programming. And it feels tight across the board. If we think about a longer term plan, and I know that's not what we're talking about right now, but you'll see how this all kind of ties together, then we can start looking at how enrollment changes and where the facilities are, but also equity across the district. How do we look at all of our elementary schools and show that there's some baseline level of facility? So no matter where you live in Elmhurst, your child's going to have this type of experience in our education and curriculum in the environment. And it's very lofty, I understand that, but it's a perspective and it's a vision. Field is tight. I live in the community in that part of Elmhurst, and there are absolutely tear downs everywhere and babies everywhere. And to give you an example, and I might be biased, but my block alone, when we first moved in 11 years ago, Demi was one of the few children on the block, maybe one of 2 or 3. And by the time Thalia was born, and now as Thalia's getting older, there's at least 15, 16 kids to play with. And so it's a much different environment for her. And I see that happening block after block in our area of Elmhurst. And it's happening in many places of Elmhurst. So that's what gets me back to the demographic study. My final note is just around finance, because I share the same question around where are we, how are we going to find dollars? And I understand that material costs are on the incline right now. We see that with lumber on the commodities market, for example. A question around, is there a process that you may take a look at that includes some level of value engineering or some options that we can look at as we get closer to November or when we're planning that next phase for field in the next 2 schools, that we can at least just look at options and make decisions prior to, getting to this place where we might have to come up with up to $8 million for one school of a difference. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, or.
That's kind of the process that we do go through when we get there. Part of that is, as we start with over the next 6 months to refine the design process, we do this internally with value engineering as we look at different options for everything. So then hopefully that we can squeeze that down. Instead of that range up there from 31 to 34, we start squeezing it down more towards the 31 and possibly a little bit under, but based on the market when we go out to bid. So that is embedded into the process that we do with ICI and with White.
Okay, that's great. And there may be a point, I don't know, where we may want to take a look at whatever you came up with in that area as we get closer, just depending on what that differential is, just to make sure we've done our due diligence. And I'm sure you have. We just want to make it,
clear that
Well,
that's
I
one
think
effort.
when you see that bigger range in estimate, you know that we aren't at the point of that all, seeing the impact of all the value engineering and so yet, and I know that those numbers will get tighter and I suspect lower as we get further in the design process. I also wanted to mention, Athena, that at a previous meeting talked about a demographic study, and we're going to do one this spring, but it was recommended that we wait until the fall. So there is a planned demographic study. It doesn't help us right now. We really have past trends, but our projections, there are so many unknowns that are so unusual right now that it makes those projections a little bit different than usual. It's not just birth rate, it's not just the amount of new construction, but you could see our when we talked about this in finance, our new construction was higher than we expected it to be in the past year. So those are some of the uncertainties about as we look at enrollment, which is a key here. Obviously, we don't want to underbuild and we don't want to overbuild, and it's hard to find the right balance.
Linda, if I can add to your train of thought as well, about 5 years ago, we also did an exhaustive facilities plan, out of which came a $168 million referendum, and we thought we had it nailed. Along the way, we started a dual language program that was promised that it would be popular, and that came to be true, and it's more popular than we planned for. COVID came along, and you got a plan, but reality gets in the way, and I think that's where we're at the moment.
Yeah, and that's what's nice about a longer-term plan, is that the referendum came, right? And then we're focusing on this, and we still have all these needs that will continue to come up for the school and our kids. And so understanding that what we're building and spending these large dollar amounts on is complementing where we want to go with our education and the type of environment or experience we want to offer our kids, I think is key. And again, it's not static. It's just knowing how those two concepts marry and will continue down their path of a longer-term perspective.
Agreed, and I think we also owe it to our taxpayers before we come back ever and ask them for more, that we show them that we're using every square foot efficiently now.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
And
yes. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and we had the conversation way back, well, it feels like forever ago, right? When we started this we knew new elementary schools would be very attractive, right, to young families. It's very unusual for a community like ours that's landlocked and, to be, older to put in new elementary schools. So we knew that was gonna be a good challenge, but here we are. But I wanted to take a minute, and Chris, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so I want to but I know, but I am. Okay, so if we can, and this is something that you can come back to us for sure, but I feel like there's a piece that maybe isn't we need to review just because it's been a while since we did the work. But, we did the boundaries, and those of us that have kind of went through that process know that those are kicking in. But, we did consider, we have an area between Hawthorne and Edison that is a flex area. And that kicks in, I'm not sure, do they all start 22?
June of 22.
Okay, 22. So next year. And then we have the area you just spoke about that's south of Butterfield Road that will start, anyone that starts after 2020 or in 2022 would go to Edison, correct?
Like you, I am not, it's been a long time, but it's all on our website. It's just a matter of calling it up.
I just feel like we need to talk about that a little bit more, like what those boundary changes that we already put into effect, but are not, we already, approved them and did the work, but they're starting to kick in the next year, and how those start impacting this, because they're to help relieve pressure at Jackson, and help balance Edison and Hawthorne and such. So if maybe, I don't know, in June, we could just kind of have a recap of where those are and any impact or how, you know,
Yeah,
I think we just need a
For
review.
a future meeting,
Yeah,
you're talking
for a
about
few,
in
yeah,
June.
for a
Okay.
future meeting,
Okay.
but I just think it's important. And then also just kind of where each school is in their capacity. So, you know, Emerson's a 4-section school. Is it at full capacity or, you know, that would be great too. So just for upcoming meeting in June. All right, I know other people have stuff. Beth?
I just think it's good to talk about these things because we do have schools that are landlocked that we can't add more space to. And I know Lincoln is, we're heading into that new building and I think it was 90%, at least the last time we looked at it, when we looked at this 90 to 95% capacity. So that's just not a building we can add on to. And there's other buildings, I'm sure, that are similar that we just don't have the space to add to. And I have to assume that coming back in after the fact and putting an addition on, like we've done so many times
Yeah.
in our buildings, is actually more expensive in the long run. So trying to tackle these things while we're in the building,
Right.
address where, you know, so that future boards can perhaps adjust boundaries or have at least options for using space at different schools. If some of them that are landlocked just can't be, you know, we just can't fit any more kids in. So I just think it's really important to think about these things now while we're in there doing this work. So thank you. And I like what's being brought up about, you know, that we're using all of our buildings as efficiently as possible.
So I'm sorry, but I had one more thing. So I'm having difficulty absorbing these figures without an update on where we're at on our budget. So if you could please. Yeah, no, I know, but I can't even like really digest these discussions without, so if you wouldn't
Go to
mind.
that now.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just like a general overview of where we're at and what that means. And then that would help me consume the rest of this. Thank you.
What I have this is kind of broken up of all the projects that we've completed so far and things that we have in process, such as Lincoln, all the things we're going to do this summer. So if you look at it, we got just about, if the referendum budget, we have $69.5 million of work in the referendum budget that's in process right now. We've paid out.
Do we have a slide with this on it?
No, I just updated it, and then I conversed with Terry just before this, so sorry about that. I wanted to make sure the numbers were right when I talked to them. We've paid out $31.7 million so far. And if you look at the things that we have in process with Lincoln and finishing up Edison, safe to say we're going to be under on Edison. And we're looking right now to be about 3% under on Lincoln, which is about $1 million. So if you look at everything that's in process right now with the track, the HVAC upgrades at York, Edison, Emerson renovations this summer, the new Lincoln, the boiler replacement out at York, and the transition center, and all the projects we've already completed right now, of that, we're estimating that we're going to be at about $69.9 million. So right about $400,000 over what the referendum budget is. But part of that too is we've already spent an additional $1 million at Fisher when we brought this initially when we had the secure entrances, because the referendum had $390,000 allocated for the office at Fisher. And we brought forward that we should do the expansion on there, and there wasn't enough money in the referendum for that. So that one came in at about $1.3 million. So we knew that one was going to be over budget from the get-go. Some projects we saved on, and some of them went over a little bit. Some of the office renovations went over, such as Fisher and Jackson and Sandburg. But on some of the other projects, we're gaining some efficiencies in there as we look at it. So as of right now, at about $70 million that's already committed out there, we're right about $400,000 under than what the referendum budget was.
Under or over?
Over.
Well, you said over,
sorry.
but you know,
400,000.
400,000.
Which is
Can
what
I-
percent?
Yeah.
well,
can
I mean, just a slight nit, but like us moving forward a capital project, like that's not really apples for apples in my view. So, I mean, I would view that like we move forward a project at Fisher that we wanted to do later to gain efficiencies. That's not really a budget overrun. That's just a capital allocation decision. So what I'm hearing is we're about, if that, we brought forward $1 million at Fisher, so we're about $500,000 under, is how I consume what you just said. And then we have these series of projects, which is at risk of being over. Okay, thank you. I needed that context before I can even.
And we'll
judge
know a
the
little
rest of
bit
these
more
statements.
out there with, obviously Edison will be finishing up here in a couple more months. We do have, with Lincoln and Edison, we do have a good chunk of contingencies out there just in case, especially with Lincoln, because we haven't put a shovel in the ground. We just put a construction trailer out there right now. So we'll know more as we get through that process. Also in the referendum, as we're talking about the budget, there are some projects that are in the referendum that were already completed prior to us approving the referendum. So there's about 1.3 million in there of projects that were completed the year just prior to the referendum. So there's that just kind of sitting out there in future work for the roof at Sandberg's Auditorium, the manufacturing lab at York, and the incubator lab at York.
Are you saying they were designated as part of the referendum, but they were completed before the referendum was approved, or, okay?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I just be sure to, apples for apples on when we talk about whether we're over or under budget. I think would be good. Yeah.
RJ? Go to Fisher. With Fisher, for the referendum budget, it had for a small classroom addition and a stage and all the other interior renovations that you see up there that we're doing at most of all our elementary schools. What we had is a referendum budget where we're at about 5.4 right now for that project, and we're figuring estimates, same thing, 600 to 650,000. Now what that does not give them any additional classroom spaces. Basically, it gets them, if we expand the media center, we do add 3 classrooms, but because we're expanding the existing media center into 2 adjacent classrooms, they don't gain anything there. And then we are getting art and music off the cart and into a classroom. Option 2 is to gain additional classroom space along with the art and music classroom. This is where we would put an addition on there for the media center. As you'll see when Craig shows you, expanding the initial media center, basically right now their library is 2 classrooms. We would take 2 adjacent classrooms, so it would be a very long and narrow library media center. With option 2, we would sit there and put an addition onto the building adjacent to a couple classrooms and build the library, the media center, along with the maker space, and then put 3 classrooms on the back east side of the building and 1 on the north side of the building. Craig, you can, wait, one more slide, RJ, sorry. What here is we've shown the actual enrollment of Fisher from 15-16 school year up until now. And you see an increase of over 100 students in there, and it will continue to increase. And as I said, currently they don't have art and music. They're on a cart, so they don't have a dedicated classroom out there. The expansions out there are no net increase of classroom space for them. Can you scroll down just a little bit, RJ? Thank you. And one more there. So, and as we talked about tonight, enrollment in the dual language continues to grow. It's a very popular program out there. So Craig will go through the 2 design options with you.
All right, so unlike Field, we're a little farther along in the design process with Field and the documentation. Because of the size and what we're talking about over at Fisher, we are just in the initial conceptual development stages, so it's a good point to be having these conversations. I gotta put these down. You can see. And so the design description is pretty much not more than what Todd just indicated when he was going over the budgets for that. But this is a look at the existing space utilization diagram that we've been using to base some of our conceptual studies off of. And what you see in the blue are all the classrooms over there. So it's really kind of important to see that predominantly most of the spaces are dedicated for, classroom instruction with just a small library that you see in purple over here. And then the assembly spaces, the gym and the multi-purpose room, kind of on the far ends of the north-south direction of the plan.
This is important to note that there are currently 25 grade level classrooms, and then the next design you're going to see, it still would be 25 grade level classrooms. And as I understand it, one of the goals of this referendum was to have a media center and makerspace that is equitable across every school. This one is extraordinarily small, just the size of 2 classrooms. And the next plan that you'll see, that's the pink there in the middle, and just shows it expanding across to take those other 2 classrooms instead of, the alternate would make it something that in square footage is about the same, but it would be closer to a square, or a rectangle, but a much more better space. But note that, they're bursting at the seams right now. If you look up at the green where the gym is up at the top, that yellow space just under it is a kindergarten classroom right now. And you can't fit more than 12 students. They're using every inch of the building, every minute of the day. And, art and music have to travel around the building. They're on like you said, on a cart. They're special instructional groups, whether it's literacy, bilingual, special education groups have to travel around or use small spaces that they can find. So this is a very tight building. Fisher Field is like this too, and Fisher is the same way with. So and then they're going from they're kind of going with the dual language. They're transitioning from a 3-section building to a 4-section, but they don't have the classroom space for it. So, and again, there's no art room, no music room, very little special instructional space. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you want to.
So let's go to the next slide.
It's like a 3.5 section school.
Oh. So this is taking a look at that first option of what happens if we add classrooms onto that far southwest or the 2007 edition. This just gives you an indication of where that might happen in the overall context of the floor plan. So let's go to the next more detailed view. And what you see in the dashed area right over here is the new construction. So there's your 3 classrooms. But as Todd pointed out when he was speaking just a few moments ago, because of the fact that we're looking at expanding the library, adding the maker space, taking over those classrooms, and then giving homes to both art and music, which happens down over here. These classrooms that we're proposing to add over here really just make up for the lost classrooms that you get with the expansion of these programs in the center. Is it an ideal shape? No, it's not. But it is an ideal location, the library. So just kind of looking at that and having further conversations, we said, all right, what happens if we pretty much keep the library centrally located, or the media center centrally located in the overall floor plan? What does that look like, and what kind of classrooms can we achieve in terms of count? So if we go to the next option, and looking at putting the library, can we go up just a tad more? There you go. Thank you very much. In some new construction right over here adjacent to the multipurpose room, then start converting the old library and the classrooms really that are in line with that space for art, music, and a couple additional classrooms. Looking at adding the 3 classroom addition on top of that, and we still we can come up with the count. Can we go just down a little bit so I get the numbers correct, or up, whatever. There's a
the other way. Yeah.
There you go. So we're actually in effect adding 2 additional classrooms, getting the student count up to about 650 kids, should you so desire to go that direction. So. Not much in the way of all the other renovations that we're proposing for the previous option would remain the same in terms of the corridor and all the other stuff. Of course, we've done the administration part, the main office already. So that is really just really conceptually at a high level where we're at.
So, thanks, Craig. Appreciate it. I know that we've talked about, right, a lot, the dual language program and how it's outgrown Conrad Fisher. And I think a need to remember Conrad Fisher as a neighborhood school and how they're quickly are losing that identity, which is important, I think, to many of us. If we're talking about, you know, offering dual language at multiple buildings, right, which would decrease the pressure at Fisher, increase it somewhere else, do they still need the extra classrooms if we're going to decrease enrollment because we're pulling kids to dual language somewhere else? Like, so it wouldn't be a, you know, 5-section kindergarten next year or so. So I'm just wondering, like, they clearly need the space and they deserve it. And the media center is a priority. I know for me, having worked on the referendum, and you know, they deserve it. And it was something that we very specifically talked about, an equitable piece that all of our schools would see this same exact, have this experience. So I'm just curious if, when we talk about these solutions to the dual language and REACH programs and where we're going to house those, if that will loosen the pressure there at all.
Yeah, to me, a big part of the problem at this school is not just the number of instructional classrooms, because it's only a net increase of 2, but it's getting classrooms, getting a media center that is equal to others in the district, and having space for not only art and music, but for social work, bilingual, special education. You know, so it is an increase in classrooms. I think even with this plan, we're going to have to talk about what happens to otherwise. Yeah, you're right. It would. I think I said 3 to 4. It would go to 5 sections if you keep the monolingual students there, and there's not room to have 6. You know, that would need 30 classrooms. You'd be losing art and music again in a few years if you.
Which I don't want. I mean, I think for me personally, my priority is to get art and music in a classroom and to get them the media center they deserve. But when we're sitting here and overall for these 3 plans, trying to find $7 million or whatever to $8 million, I'm just wondering, you know, if the belt's going to get loosened because we split dual language in two locations as an option. Maybe we don't do the extra 2 classrooms. Maybe they net the same classrooms, get their media, get their art, get their music, and how much does that save us? I don't know. I'm just trying to. You know, we were talking about $7 to $8 million here in additional costs from what we promised in the referendum, and where that money comes from is really the question.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. I know you don't have the answer. Right.
And I do have just a question around the media center and library changes being bid. Am I reading this correct as an alternate? So in the second
That's an
plan?
alternate right there. The other
Is the media center the alternate, or?
It's bigger in this classroom.
Okay, so it's the addition, it's the change of the media center location and space, square footage, and.
Well, that has to be adding cost. Yeah, the media center.
And the 2 classrooms.
3, yeah. Right, net 2, but it's, yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking, you're right, I'm talking about this right here. What is being bid as the alternate, just the 2 classrooms? On this plan, right, this is an
What
option for us
causes
to
the increase in
consider.
cost? Well, it has to be, part of it has to be, you're putting new construction on the media center there in front of the school.
Right.
Right. And then there's looks like there's structurally 1 additional classroom at the top there. Yeah. So it's the media center and the one
Yeah.
classroom that the building is longer there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm
Those
asking-
3 others are also in the other plan.
But Craig, if I could just feed on that point, in option 1, which was what we originally planned, they're still getting the separate art and music classrooms.
Yes.
And they're still getting the expanded media center that would, you know, be equitable to the other schools that are out there.
They're getting an expanded media.
I mean, it's,
yes,
yeah, because
it's
they're
just a different
sucking up,
shape.
yeah, just a different shape. It's that long rectangle.
square
version.
footage.
So they're still getting that in the option 1.
Right.
And then option 2 is when you kind of change the shape of the media center to this, and then add the extra classroom.
Part of the confusion might be, I didn't go through all the physical changes that are happening in the building in each one. I hit the highlights.
Yeah, it's okay.
If you look at the colors between all the different options that you have over here, we're
Mhm.
reclaiming some of that space over there. And there's some other little adjustments that go into making the numbers what we presented here. So,
Mhm.
you know, if there's another time you want to go through that in detail, I'd be happy to sit with you and so you understand that.
Yeah, no, I got it. Thank you for clarifying. I was just trying to make sure that when we're talking about the baseline that we agreed to with the media center additions and things to, or inclusions to all of our schools, that it's represented not just as an alternate, is my understanding now. It is in the solid plan or bid, but the alternate is the additional 2 classrooms, which changes the media space. And really, if you look at the footprint, the flow might make more sense on this one for a school than, meaning like as I try to picture myself walking through the building, you know, just how this is all kind of put together rather than spread out feels a little better too. Okay, so essentially both of those options do what was one of the core, you kind of alluded to this, was one of the core missions of the referendum was bringing parity to the schools, right? That whichever elementary you went to, you would get this, you know, have the opportunities and
And I will tell you,
facility.
being in homes around the community for that, you know, 2-month period, I can tell you that was a very passionate thing for everyone we spoke to, and so rightfully so.
So, okay. All right, so anything else on this? Are we ready to move to the next, to Jackson? Do you have something or no?
I'm just wrestling with this one. If I have questions, is based on, are you asking us tonight to tell you, do we want option 1, option 2? I mean, is there an ask here or is it informational?
It's more informational, but then we will be needing it will be an ask. The imperative one right now is obviously field. Field is the imperative one right now, that we need some decisions or clarifications on which direction to go. With these two, with Fisher and with Jackson, well, we have a plan for Jackson, but with Fisher, we're going to need it very shortly here, probably by the 15th. So we can keep our schedule as we sit there going with everything to get everything bid out in the timeline that ICA wants and thinks it would be perfect for in the November timeline.
So I do have a few questions then. Or do you
So-
want to?
yeah, no, I was
think
just
we'll
gonna-
be coming back in June is what you're, with the ask. This is more
For Fisher.
informational tonight. And I think there are a few things that we need to nail down as well. We talked about this at Finance Committee meeting last week, but wanted to bring it to the full board tonight and at least hear some direction. What additional information do you want? What additional, you know, things would help you make a decision here? But that we're looking at June, you know, because we're getting pretty advanced in the design and needs to make some decisions.
So then, we have X dollars for Fisher that's allocated for the referendum.
Correct.
But what we've identified based on all the needs that you all have said, you're asking us for an option 1 and option 2, which is above and beyond the original referendum for Fisher, right?
Correct.
Okay, you base it that way.
Right.
And then we have a lot of programs at Fisher that are currently there that are expanding, like dual language, neighborhood school, and the conversation was reached, but in the magnet, but that was put on hold. So I'm trying to wrap my head around, you know, like what are we putting at Fisher, and therefore what do we need for me to start looking at option 1 or option 2, or so that's where I am, Linda.
So the complication at Fisher is that, so you know, it's a dual language and it's like a magnet program. You are bringing students from elsewhere. But if you think of 95 to 100 students that are in dual language, you know, 4 solid sections, or it's not quite, it's like 88, I think right now, or 90 that are enrolled in the kindergarten for next year. Um, uh, in fact, the limit is, so it must be 88. But they're, only about a third of those students are coming from other schools. So if you try to limit the size of the program, you may, some of those students, they're not, you can't just eliminate, you're aiming for 50% English-speaking students and 50% Spanish-speaking students. So if you say that, for instance, no kids can come from other schools, then the program is a truly, it's a dual language, but it's only that school's neighborhood, and it would not be 50% Spanish-speaking, 50% English-speaking. So that's another complication of that program. I don't know if that helps you.
No, it does, because the question was, can we move to a language? I mean, that's the big question.
Well,
and if we can, I mean, we can theorize about it all we want, but if we really can't, otherwise it won't be a dual language, then we have to say it has to be at Fisher, and therefore what's the capacity needs, and therefore what is the right conversation around what you're asking us.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
What was the percentage from other schools, Linda?
Pardon me?
What percentage of the students come from other schools?
Let me give you the numbers. So the incoming kindergarten is 78 students. 50 of them are from the Fisher boundary. 28 of them are outside the Fisher boundary. 26 out of the 50 Fisher students are Spanish speaking, native Spanish speaking, and 11 of the 28 students that are outside the Fisher boundary are native Spanish speakers. So there are a total of 37 native Spanish speakers of the total 78 kindergarten students.
Thank you.
Linda, just a comment or just a thought I'm having, you know, it's challenging for us to look at, you know, one program and say this is where we're going to house. It's a very fixed plan. And I think, or I encourage us to consider, and this is very difficult to do, but we want to make sure that the facilities we're building offer us flexibility to make decisions for our curricular programs. And so it may mean that Fisher adds 2 classrooms at this time to meet our current needs, while also thinking forward to if there were any changes, whether it's dual language or anything, that we're building for flexibility. And that we're not building to just kind of solve this one problem here and then this one problem there, that there's a cohesive vision or kind of idea around building for flexibility in the instructional plan.
Maybe to add on to what Athena said, I'd like to see what, if you can just, in your planning, just jump ahead 3 years when you're going to have an extra 300 kid capacity at Edison. And, you know, as part of the plan, come back to us and say, all right, 3 years from now, when we have all this extra capacity at one school, this would be our recommendation for how we distribute these programs that draw from the entire district. And let's plan 3 years out, not just for next fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'd
Well, and I
second and
think
go
that's what
farther
this-
sorry, Karen, I'd second and go farther than 3 years, just right behind you, you know, I mean, I know it's big picture and I'm repeating myself, but I think it's so important, and then we don't end up in these situations where we're trying to figure out how enrollment's gonna change or what programs are gonna change, so.
We're going to have that demographic study in the fall based on the September 30th enrollment. And I do think it's going to be a challenge
Yeah.
to know the impact of what all-day kindergarten and dual language and new schools, I don't know how this demographer is going to project these factors. Like, you don't know how the community is going and the kindergarten and just the enrollment is going to change. I think it's really going to be a challenge to figure out the long-term future when we have these new curriculum programs that are gaining popularity, that people are seeing the value of all-day kindergarten, seeing the value of dual language and how that's going to impact enrollment at our 8 elementary schools. It's going to be a real challenge. The demographer is going to look at live births and, you know, the census data, the new 2020 census data. But knowing how the community is going to respond to all-day kindergarten and dual language is going to be a real challenge. I don't even know how that's going to work out.
I think it's ideal to try to look out as far as we possibly can, but like Jim said earlier, I think when when the master facility plan was being put together, that was also the thought process at that time. So it's just hard to predict how these things are going to change over time. And I think you're always going to have those adjustments to be made. I think some of it is just, involves some strategic guesswork, unfortunately. I mean,
I like the idea of just looking at what we've planned right now, what will be the capacity of each of these elementary buildings, and and also with the value of neighborhood schools, that we're trying to keep and create neighborhood schools. But then we're also adding into it a layer of complication with dual language, and if REACH becomes a separate program, that impacts neighborhood schools. It does. But where will we have the capacity? If we did these alternates, we would have additional capacity. We know we will at Lincoln, and we know we would at Field if we went to this additional. But it appears to me everywhere else is pretty full. But let's do that. I think that's a great idea. We'll develop that chart and then look at, but we don't have a demographic study done yet. We'll just have to look at with the best that we have, the best information that we have. We know what we have planned to build. What we don't know is what people will do. And I've been hearing since I started doing focus groups in January how attractive Elmhurst is, and how, despite turmoil this year, people are moving here. We see that in new construction, in enrollments that are unexpected. But we've also been hit by COVID with some people pulling kids out, and so to get in-person instruction. So then trying to guess, are all those kids coming back and all. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but there are some things we know. We know the physical capacity of our buildings and what we plan for.
Thank you.
So Fisher is a 4-section school, right? Currently?
4 plus.
Okay.
Yeah, they have 3 grade levels with 5 sections right now.
Yes, because I was going to say, with dual language, we're going to 5. This project is not for next year, it's the following year.
For the
right?
summer of 2022.
Right.
Right. So just, right. We have a short-term problem too. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. No.
Jackson. RJ, if you would, please. Jackson, as we're looking in here, this same thing with the library, media center, all the renovations. With Jackson, it did have money in there for air conditioning the building, so that runs into some more challenges there to put basically a central plant in that building. Right now, the referendum, what we have there for the budget is approximately $5.4 million, and what you're seeing out there, project estimate right now is about $7 to $7.5 million. Also on here, we have to look at a potential classroom and office addition in the building, which Craig will show you a little bit later. The reason why we're looking at that on the next slide, same thing with projection with enrollments. As we look at it, they have 80 students right now instead of the projected 73 in kindergarten. They also have 88 first graders instead of the projected 73. So as we look at it, we're looking at doing an alternate bid potentially for the classroom and the office addition as an alternate bid on here, so we can move forward and keep with the design process. And then as we get there with the demographic study, hopefully, if we have that done, and by the time we send it out to bid, we can see if we do need that additional classroom and that other office space, or if we don't. So this one's a little bit more cut and dry to help us move forward on this. Craig will go through kind of the designs that we have for it.
All right, similar to what we talked about over at Fisher, this is what you're looking at is the existing space utilization. All the same colors that we had before, libraries in pink, right, basically in the center of the footprint. Blue are the classrooms. You do have a second floor, but really you have a total of 19 grade level classrooms serving 456 students thereabout, or capacity of 456 students. So what does that look like when we start looking at expanding the library, getting the makerspace in there, and the alternate for some additional classroom space should you elect and choose to go that route with all the program changes and so forth that you're contemplating or might be contemplating. So let's go to the next plan here. Well, let's just keep going. That's your second floor. And that's the basement. You have a couple resource spaces that will relocate as part of all of this. But really adding an expansion, what you see in the dashed red line, that's your new media center. Still located in the center of the space, but certainly towards the outside perimeter of the building. So let's go to the next slide. And what that looks like floor plan wise. Again, media center located right over here. Enough space for your makerspace, some additional resource functions. And then the alternate that Ted was talking about really could happen right in this niche, in this corner. It's almost ideal for some expansion, a couple classrooms, and depending on where you want to go, maybe we can even push it out for a third if you need to go that quantity. So really reconverting then the library to a couple additional classroom spaces, and really it's just right sizing the building and this whole notion of equity and maintaining that throughout the district. So that's what we have, as Todd indicated, pretty straightforward from a floor plan standpoint. And we are at the initial stages from a conceptual design standpoint, so it's kind of ideal to have this conversation before we really start getting into the nitty-gritty, talking to the teachers and so forth.
Yeah, so why don't we just start on the cost for this? So that, I mean, on a percentage basis, it's a big number. And so what's driving, is that the same cost inflation issues that we talked about earlier? Is that something else?
Yes. Same cost inflation issues. And plus some of the work with their getting the piping ran through that building when we're going to air condition the whole building. Some of the design problems with that building of getting them out there and the type of HVAC system we have in there. And going back and forth if we have to sprinkler the building, if not. And then as we sit there looking at sprinkling the building, initially in the referendum there wasn't taking out some of the classroom. If you have to go in there and sprinkle the building, you get into the classrooms, do you keep the existing grid, the lights and everything, and try to get the plumbing and work around it, or you just rip the ceiling down, do the sprinkler system? So we're looking at, we may not have to sprinkler it, so that may be able to bring that cost down a little bit.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, complexities of an HVAC system is not exactly material cost inflation, right? So that's a little different.
Right.
Okay. And any water issues with this? Okay.
No.
And so then what else is left after we look at these three projects and then, you know, what we've already completed or is currently done?
So as we look at this, the projects that we still have out there, we have the full, the second phase renovations out at Bryan, the renovations out at Churchville, including the auditorium addition and the main office renovations, along with the corridor and everything else. The interior renovations at Sandburg, the total renovation of Madison, Early Childhood Center, some small renovations out there at Hawthorne. We have the baseball field improvements, cafeteria, baseball field improvements out at York, cafeteria roof at York, and then some minor tuck pointing and York student lot.
Got it. Okay. So Linda, one of the things that would be important to me before, you know, providing guidance on this at our next board meeting would be if we take these three projects, what we've already done, and then we need to look at what we still have left. If we extrapolate these trends, what does it mean for our costs on those projects, and sort of where are we at from a total budget perspective, I think is a critical factor for me to be able to think through these things. And then second, I'd like to just very clearly delineate what is a change in scope versus what is, exceeding our original budget. Because I feel like we're conflating the figures a bit. If we decide to add classrooms because we've had a popular program grow, to me, that's not like going over the referendum budget. That's just sort of updating the analysis. So it looks like about half of the 7 or 8 million is cost overruns, and half would be change in scope, roughly speaking. But if we could clarify that, I would appreciate it. And then lastly, sorry, a deeper dive into why would we need this space. So I'm open-minded on the additional classrooms, but I want to see the justification. I think the analysis Jim asked for will help with that. Of just how do we know for sure that we need the space and it would be utilized. Thank you.
There's 2 other projects I just didn't mention. We have the York Auditorium, and then the total renovation, the second phase of Jefferson, similar to this, which actually that one is tracking right at budget.
So that's a lot of information, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. And I just want to echo, if we can have that data, can you give us a dashboard or snapshot of where we started, where we're at after finishing Lincoln and this summer's work, and whatever is already committed, what the cost changes might be with these options, and then what's budgeted for that third phase is what I'll call it, after these 3 schools are finished, so that we can see the whole picture. And I'd continue to encourage, I'm not sure, and I like the idea of separating the scope versus, the scope changes, what we're changing in scope from the original project versus overage. Maybe we can include what we have in our contingency available to us for both of those, building and consult, and then also just hit home again about value engineering and what you can help us with as far as building. I understand materials are going up, but where are you anticipating we're going to be able to reduce a little bit of that overage?
Okay. Thanks. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you kind of know what follow-ups?
Yes. Yep, I got a lot of notes.
Okay, and then we'll plan to be able to make a decision in June.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so next up is a consent agenda, and I just, before I ask if anybody wants to pull anything, I do just want to address a question that I got about what transitional services agreement for Dr. Keisha Campbell means. So Dr. Campbell is working for up to 20 days in May and June to conduct meetings and begin working with administrators, board members, parents, teachers, and staff, as well as with interim superintendent Dr. Yonke to ensure a smooth transition to the superintendent role. So I just wanted to clarify that because there was a question that I received ahead of time. So that is on the consent agenda. So, with that, I will ask if anyone would like to pull an item off of the consent agenda. Karen?
I'd like to pull item C off of the agenda to provide information.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right, could I have a motion for the consent agenda minus item C?
I move, with glasses, that the Board of Education approve consent agenda items: A, personnel report; B, financial reports; D, memo of understanding between DuPage ROE and Elmhurst CUSD 205 for regional safe schools; E, 2021-2022 Edward Elmhurst Nurses Agreement; F, new Chromebooks for York freshmen; G, bid 21-12 transition center renovation; and H, transitional services agreement for Dr. Keisha Campbell.
Second. Okay, motion by Mrs. Troutman, second by, who was that? Athena, sorry, I can't hear. All right, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanites?
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, the motion passes. All right, if I could have a motion for item C.
I move that the Board of Education approve the instructional material IXL for English Language Arts as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Mrs. Stufen, second by Mrs. Hostler. Mrs. Stufen, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I inquired about this item. And I found out a lot of information, and I think that it's a great opportunity for us to share with the community and the students, parents, a little bit more about this program and who it's for and how they know about it and what the value of it for our students.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So the program that we are discussing is called IXL for ELA. ELA short for English Language Arts. This is an additional resource requested to support students over the summer. It's not an isolated resource. We have several others that we will be posting on the summer school website. What is really neat and worth highlighting about IXL ELA is that it is an adaptive program, so similar to some of the tests that might be taken related to the MCAT and other tests related to that. It has an adaptive feature that allows for the resources to be differentiated for students, and all students in grades 6-12 can use it even at home. So this is not a program that needs to be utilized while attending summer school or any one of our summer programs. It's actually a program that students will be able to activate and utilize with the ease of even using a QR code, which the students know a lot more about than we do. But we have designed a series of summer digital resources that we'll be posting on the website along with this example, and students will be able to simply, and parents will be able to use their phone, access the QR codes, and it will immediately bring them to access points for logging into the programs that are available. What I think is really neat about this feature is that it complements the curriculum that we have here in the district. It will be a really great resource for students to just continue with their learning, whether they're in summer school or they're not. So again, it's for grades 6-12. It's called IXL for English Language Arts. It's completely self-paced and allows for students to assess word study, reading comprehension, grammar, and various conventions in writing. So I think it'll be a really great complement to programs both in the summer school and then obviously the curriculum that students will leave off in the summer and then pick back up in the fall. Any questions, anything I missed?
So it's something that we're launching for summer, but will be used all year long after that?
Right now, it's only going to be designated for the summer, but the idea being that it was chosen by a committee of teachers because it matches really well with our curriculum and fits in for students to be able to sort of pick up and leave off for the summer when they want to, and then return to it when they feel like they can in their learning. So it's very flexible. It's not burdensome in any way, and it's a good tool for parents to access to if they have interest for their students.
So since it's 6 through 12 grades, the schools are communicating it to the students and parents so that that's how they find out about it?
We have a whole summer school website that we are going to be sharing out with the parents to just sort of be able to show them all the resources that will be available. Once it's approved, we'll be able to add it to the list, and then we'll publicize that list so that the parents can access it, whether they're involved in summer school or not. They'll know the one-stop shop for that information.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, anything else? All right, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanites?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right, next is the superintendent's agenda action items. Item A, approval of resolution of the Board of Education directing the school treasurer to transfer funds from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. Yeah, Chris.
So this resolution is by the Illinois Program Accounting Manual to transfer from the Operation and Maintenance Fund to the Fund 60, the Capital Projects Fund, for the summer capital maintenance projects that we will be doing this summer. So this is to transfer $4 million. This is the amount. We've been targeting a higher amount in order to keep our facilities and extend the useful life of our facilities and properly maintain our facilities. In the past, we were doing 1.5 million. We've moved that up to 4 million, which is more than $2 per square foot now. And we talked about this at the Finance and Operations Committee meeting.
Thanks. Could I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution to transfer money from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund in the amount of $4 million.
I'll second.
Any questions, comments? Okay, all right, you can go ahead and call the vote then.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Stupen,
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanites,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. Item B, Foundation 205 Themes Grants.
So this is from the Foundation 205, which has been in existence since 1988. And this is an annual part of their giving back to the district. And if you look at the memo indicates they're asking the board to approve $99,000 from the foundation as a gift, and it includes $43,000 to support innovation and engagement for students in K through 5, $17,000 at the middle school level for all three middle schools, and the elementary amount, there's some to each school, and then $39,000 in resources and programming for students at York High School and the Transition Center building. So they're asking the board to approve that donation.
All right, could I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approves a donation of $99,000 from Foundation 205 to fund our 2021 Themes Grant Awards.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Hostler, second by Mrs. Troutman. Comments?
I will just once again sit here in awe at everything that the foundation does for our students and our community. And I've attended a couple of their meetings this year, and got the privilege and opportunity to bring Dr. Campbell to their last meeting and introduce her to them. And she got to see just the passion that everybody has there. And I literally said to her, I go, the people in this room, they're the doers in this community, and they continue to do for our schools and our students. And I, again, am always in awe of them and so appreciative. So thank you once again.
I just thought it's even more significant this year. I mean, they raised more money than they have other years, and it was a COVID year. So, our hats off to all of you and the community for participating in all of their events, even in a difficult year. At some point, I know that, I always go to their website and see exactly what all these details are. I mean, at some point, I think that we could showcase it or bring them in again. I know it's been a while since we've done that, because it's especially significant this year, not just because of COVID, but the dollar amount and all that they are providing. And a few of the items that I heard about were just something unique and different. So I think it's always important for us to share that.
Well, now, I think that after we approve, then don't they announce to the winners who got the grants? So then maybe after that, maybe this summer even, could be something to highlight. Okay, all right. Then go ahead and call the vote.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Stupen,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanites,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right. Next up is superintendent's communication. Item A, COVID update.
I'll let Dr. Rubenstein talk about this, but I do want to thank him for the work he has done in setting up our vaccination clinics that are going on. There are at least three different sets of clinics, and targeting students and targeting people who have had a hard time getting a vaccination in parts of the community where it may be harder to get to places that offer the vaccination. So I want to thank him for that. To point out, we had a number of people talk about masks tonight, and students continuing to wear masks. That yes, the mask mandate was changed for adults who are vaccinated. Well, for anyone who's vaccinated, there are changes in masking, but in school, it was specifically also mandated that schools continue to have students and staff wear masks. So that's in here as well for the rest of the school year. I'm very much hoping that's not the case for next school year. And I know I'm working with Dr. Campbell on beginning and continuing a planning process for next year. I think it's critically important that planning take place this summer. I'm sure that she'll be in charge of it. We have an appointment to talk with a doctor that we're inviting to be part of this team, and we'll continue to do that as well. The planning will be very thorough. We're so hopeful that the year will look as normal as it did the year before COVID, but we know it may not be exactly like that, but our goal is to make it as normal an experience as possible. So that planning is underway. Dr. Rubenstein, if you have anything to add, again, I've said all the things that you were going to say maybe, but.
That's that's completely fine. I think that the things that our families and that all of you on the board may be following, the State Board of Education recently passed a resolution requiring, supporting a return to in-person learning for all Illinois students during the next school year. And so there's a great deal of talk amongst educators and families across the state about what that actually means. And they're offering a series of webinars for educators across the state in the coming days. And as Dr. Yonke indicated, we are expecting some Phase 5 guidance after June 11th, which should help us to determine additional information about requirements for face coverings, self-certification, information about quarantines, all of those other sorts of things that people have been wondering about and are detailed in the board document there. And then we just sort of took some time to plot out what we are planning on working on during the summer and into the early fall. So we definitely want to continue to offer vaccine clinics for our families. Those right now have to be spaced 3 weeks apart. So we have to plot those out on the calendar very neatly. We want to offer, and we are offering, a high quality summer programming. After the guidance gets issued by the Department of Public Health and the State Board of Education, reviewing all of our protocols, making sure that our websites are up to date, and that publications are clear and consistent, and that every forward-facing document for our families is easily readable, and all of those other sorts of things. We have a small number of families, and by small, I mean actually under 20, who have indicated that they would like to have their students remain virtual for the 2021-2022 school year because of existing medical conditions. And so we are going to be collaborating with those families over the summer to gather some additional medical documentation from them over the summer and ensure that they are appropriately educated during the 21-22 school year. And then make sure that our programs are consistent and that our students are supported appropriately in the next school year and beyond.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Chris Walton if he could give an update on providing access to our indoor facilities to third parties, please.
So we have, or we will be opening up the reservation process similar to the way we were doing pre-COVID. We will be having a night in July, I think it's July 12th, where users of York, generally speaking, it's the field house and the gyms and also the pool that are frequently reserved at York. And so we've invited them to a meeting where they can work together to try and maximize use of the York facility starting next school year for after hours and weekends. The way we do it, we make sure all the schools have done all of their reservations for next year. Then we have an intergovernmental agreement with the park districts, and once the schools have done, we open it up to the park district, so they put all their reservations in, and then we open it up to the other organizations after we have that meeting, and then we put all of those reservations in, and then we open it up to the public to also reserve. So we're back to the same process we did before COVID on our reservation system.
Great. Thank you for the work on that. I think it's important to a lot of people in our community, many of which are our own students. And then lastly, just a comment, I know as we plan for next year, my hope and expectation is that we can look at all of the variances from our normal operations that we were forced to make as a result of COVID and remove as many of those variances as we possibly can. I think that's what our community is expecting of us. And that's not only, the bigger policies where we need to interact with other agencies, like we heard a lot about masks and quarantines, but that's, all the little things that are happening in our buildings as well. And I hope that we all can take that to heart and reflect that in a public way so folks know that heading into next school year. Thank you.
Public comment tonight was a lot about the mask mandate. I get those questions as well, just so that our community understands exactly where does the mask mandate for school children come from? What agency tells us we have to do that?
State Department of Public Health.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. All right, next is FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests.
It's me, isn't it? Okay. There were 5 FOIAs in the past few weeks. May 4th, bid information was granted. May 13th, quarantine information was granted. May 14th, IT outsourcing information granted. May 17th, surveillance screening information granted. And May 18th, quarantine information granted.
Okay, and then lastly is tweets of the week.
All right, good evening to the board and to our community. It is time for tweets and posts of the week covering all of our various social media. As you noticed when you were coming in, there were several events that have happened over the past week, from prom to graduation to the last look at Lincoln to the Nora project that we had scrolling some images, as well as the presentation from Patrick Baker on NUM. So social media also reflects all of the positive things that are going on in our district. And this week is no shortage of that. So RJ, on the first slide, under our hashtag for Ignite D205, from our Twitter feed, we are recognizing parent Matt Toole for sharing his recent post about his 11-year journey with ALS and being grateful for the opportunity to watch his son graduate on Sunday. So many of the times we think it's just a ceremony, but for a lot of people, this is life. This is an achievement of a lifetime. And in his post, it says, 11 years ago, I began my ALS journey. Today, I was there to watch my son, and many of you may know him, Podrick Toole, graduate from at York D205, and he has a lot of hashtags, but among them are hashtag proud dad, hashtag every day is a gift, and also he comes up with our hashtag that we had for graduation, hashtag York Class of 2021. So shout out to Matt Toole for his gratitude, and also to his son and to all of our graduates of the class of 2021. Moving on to our Facebook feed, recognizing Churchville Middle School at Churchville D205 is their handle for its recent post about its end-of-year concert and celebrating the career and the retirement of their band instructor, Mrs. Krause. And like many of our musical performances, we had to go outside, Ravinia style, on the lawns for our concerts, which did actually open it up and really reveal it to a lot of our community, the greatness that lies behind our music program. And another one from our Facebook feed, and this is a shout out to Amy Thompson, who brought this up to us in the counseling department at York for sharing news about an alum from the class of 2017, Christine Millens, who was featured in the Amazon Prime series, The College Tour. Christine can be seen on season 1, episode 5, and if you go to our Facebook page, there is a link that will get you to that series and to that episode. And she's recapping her time at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign campus, and she speaks glowingly about her experience in college, and she also reflects back on how high school helped her prepare. So it was great to hear from an alum on how she feels about her pursuit of higher ed. And then finally, we talked a lot about construction, but here's the bright spot, Edison's new playground. They featured on Instagram and said, it's almost there, it's getting there. The vision is coming to pass. So in the fall, we'll be able to see the final results of it all. But right now, our students will have a new playground pad to play on. So congratulations to Edison for staying the course. And they're right, it's getting there. We're going to get there. So with that, we encourage you to like, follow, share Elmhurst D205 on social media, and with all your friends, let them know the great news about our district. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, next is board communications. Board members present reports or share information with the full board. Anything?
Yes. So I just wanted to bring back to the board, I'll give you a little timeline. Back in October of 2020, this board voiced its support of IASB Resolution 2, which is a safe gun storage resolution that was presented at the November IASB meeting. Dr. Harrell expressed our support of that resolution as our representative. IASB did not pass that resolution in November, mostly citing the fact that, let's see what the quote they used here, was that their position statements deal directly with the issues that happen inside of a school district, and this proposal would be a departure from that practice. So given that, the issue was continued to be discussed at Safety and Security Committee meetings, 2 separate ones, this winter and this early spring, discussed with all of our partners in the city, law enforcement, fire, park district, counselors, everybody on the Safety and Security meeting, who were all very supportive of this resolution, and specifically the police department talked about being supportive education of safe gun storage in the homes. The number of, I should probably remember the number of something, is the number of weapons that I think it's 78%, if I'm remembering correctly, and somebody will correct me, but of weapons used in school shootings come from unsecured weapons in a home. And that's just statistics. Most recently, the tragic little girl, 12-year-olds in Hazel Crest, playing in a friend's house, and the friend got a hold of a weapon and shot her inadvertently. So all the board members have received from me personally the documents regarding secure gun storage last month. April was last month, right? April. So I would encourage you to review them again, and I would like to see the support of the board. If I would like to bring this to a vote to the board next month in our June meeting, so that we can send a message that to encourage gun safety at home. It's not a message about who should have a gun or who should not have a gun. It's about, if you do have one, be responsible for it and secure it safely at home to protect your family and the students in our buildings. So I'll bring that back to the board in June, hopefully for a vote of support from this board.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, we have 3 upcoming meetings. May 26th, tomorrow night, special Board of Education meeting at 5 o'clock here in District 205 Center. June 2nd, 2021, Board of Education policy meeting at 6 o'clock here in District 205 Center. And June 15th, 2021 is our regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here in District 205 Center. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.